Well, we have Ruth Evelyn Brown Butler and now Robert Randle Butler, both of my parents and Rory Lee Butler's parents. And we mentioned this morning that RR, as I call him, and I think Rory even does now. And I know Betsy calls you Mama Ruth and RR, but that's fine. But you're mother to me, and sometimes Mama Ruth. But anyway, we were talking this morning. We kind of stopped last night with Mother, getting into the point where Rory's adopted and I'm adopted, and then we kind of had this thing this morning going on where we went back and talked about the surviving family members of the Browns and what happened, and we talked about RR being back, and he's back, and we're going to kind of start with him today on his view of when he was in the service, and then we'll get back from the service to I don't know, I'm still a little confused. You're briefly in Odom, then you go to Pecos, and I didn't know till last night that Evans didn't come till later, or why you went there. So we're going to start with your service experience. And we know you're in the Navy, and I've still got that picture we'll take a little snapshot of. But I'm going to kind of hone in on RR. Don't feel left out, Mama Ruth. And remember, you're talking to Will and Betsy and Rachel and maybe their kids someday. So I'm kind of honed in on you. So tell me, how did you get out? We know you grew up in Odom, and I'll do the rest of that some other time with you.
Yeah.
But let's just start with your service years and how you got out to Southern California. And of course, we know there was Pearl Harbor. So I'm going to quit talking, and you can just start anywhere you want. Go.
I went to school at North Texas Agriculture College, which was a part of Texas A&M back in those days. But I was very fortunate. It was a 2-year school, but it was a military school. And I had military training, and as a result of that, we were there when I was there when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and that was quite an experience because we were having dress parade that day. And boy, you could just talk about the emotions that hit all of us as we went through the deal, and we marched around, and when they said "Eyes right," and looked at the American flag, you can see how emotional I am.
It's okay. Take your time.
It was really an experience, and so after that, I decided after school I would go back home, and then I got drafted and went into the service and went to San Diego and was in the boot camp. But because I had training in the military, I was made the leader over the boot camp, and I had an officer above me when we graduated from boot camp, and all of the young graduates at that time were being put on merchant ships and sent out to war over to Japan and to the islands.
Wasn't that called the Pacific Theater
Yeah,
for these
Pacific
kids? There was a
Island.
European theater already going.
No, this was over the Pacific
Right.
War. And this man that was in charge of our boot camp, he said, Butler, he says, you're too good for something like that. He said, if you'll just stay here with me for a little while, I'll get you into a school. And so he did. And so as a result of that,
Keep looking right there.
I was able to go to the several schools, and then, to make a long story short, I ended up in San Diego. And it was a really good experience there because, again, I was doing some things for the war, and for that particular base, it was aviation ordnance second class, and that as a result of all of that, I got to do a lot of neat things, and that's when doing some social life. There were some places there in San Diego that I would go to, and that's one of the places I'd gone to. It was, I don't know whether you'd call it a bar or whether it was a place where people gathered. I don't know how you would describe the place. I can't really describe it, but anyhow, I met Ruth there, and we dated for quite a while, and
Keep talking.
there when we were getting mustered out and everything, I decided we wanted to get married. But being in the Navy, people wanted to know if I was ever on board ship, and I was. I went on board ship. They put me on a ship the day I was to be mustered out, and I got on the ship in San Diego one morning, and we went to Long Beach, which is about less than 200 miles up the coast. And they said, well, this is the weekend, we won't be doing anything this weekend. So I got out on the highway and hitchhiked back to San Diego to meet with Ruth for the weekend. And
she talked about how y'all met. Now, you have a different story. You were joking last night you met her at a Baptist church. We don't think that's true.
Well,
so let's talk about the truth. You came in with Lynn and another soldier.
It wasn't quite like the Baptist church.
Well, let's be honest.
The Baptist the Baptist uses a little bit more water, and we had a different type of liquid that we used. But anyhow, I didn't want my grandkids and great grandkids to know that.
They drink a little beer and now and then. Don't worry.
That I got into a deal like that, but it was a social life and it was fun. But
well, everybody was doing that back then.
Oh,
smoking, and I mean, look, you're about to ship out possibly someday.
Yeah.
You never made it over into the fighting. There were men over there
every
fighting
time I
to
would
the
sign
death.
up to go overseas, whoever was in charge of the bases, well, we can't let you go. So you're too important, because I was in charge of all of the supplies being brought in to work on those planes that were brought in for service.
And you met somebody named Jeff Bruton, I think.
Jeff and I were he was my upperclassman when I was North Texas Agricultural College.
And he was from Dallas.
He was from Dallas, and he came out there, and in fact, he was probably in a base not over 20 miles from where I was.
And this is not about me, but Rory and I grew up with 4 Bruton kids,
right.
and you took us, and we're not going to get off on that, but
anyhow,
I didn't want to leave him out of your story right now.
Yeah. We had a lot of social times together, the Brutons and ourselves. And then when I got discharged, Ruth and I got in a plane and flew back to Texas.
Well, now, when did you get married and where? She's already said.
We got married. Did we ever get married?
March the 1st.
Oh, my goodness. We got married in a Baptist church. Now, that's no lie.
Well, that's kind of interesting. There's bound to have been some Methodist churches.
Oh, yeah. And
what did you tell your father, Mr. Methodist?
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, maybe you didn't tell him.
I remember the vows that we took, and she swore to everything. And for 64 years, she's pretty well kept her.
She said 63. I think we'll have to count.
I'd have to remind her of them every now and then, to keep her in line. But
well, she said the one about "I will obey" was not really her cup of tea. But
no, it wasn't.
No, but it was a real nice deal. And
she said that you don't remember that y'all went, that you took her or drove her or something back to meet your parents. E.S. Butler Sr. and eldest, your grandmother, your stepmother.
You got a discharge or got out of service somehow. We flew back to Odom, but she said we flew to San Antonio. And she had a room there in the Gunner Hotel, and I said, well, where did I stay? She said, I don't know, you just took off somewhere.
No,
and my father and mother met Ruth for breakfast, I believe she said.
Right.
There in the Gunner Hotel in San Antonio. She said, to her knowledge, we did not go to Odom.
We did.
And we turned around and went back to San Diego.
And that was before the wedding in the Baptist church.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just before that.
He had some kind of an old car that he drove down there in, and he said, where did I get that car? I said, I have no idea, not a clue.
And it didn't have any very good tires on it, and my daddy was on the ration board back during the war to get sugar and tires and a few commodities that were very, very scarce. You had to go to these different boards and make an application. And so I went up there, and my dad got me 2, I guess it was used tires or retread tires to put on my car to get back to San Diego. And we went back to San Diego.
When, for the benefit of the kids, that's because the rubber and gasoline and food was going to the war effort.
Yeah. Yeah,
the relationship of the marriage to World War to the Pearl Harbor, and already there was blitzkrieg going on, and of course Pearl Harbor's when FDR said he declared war, but it wasn't like Hitler snuck up on anybody.
No.
We knew that was coming, but they kind of was a surprise attack, and all of a sudden we were fighting in the Pacific, and of course the kids know that from history, but you guys were actually there.
And there was a lot of fear that Japanese subs or something would come up and attack us on the Pacific coast.
Well,
but to my knowledge, all the time we were out there, our ships were able to protect the Pacific coast, and I don't think they got much closer over to us than about halfway between Pearl Harbor and the Pacific.
And that would be at the beginning, but Mother talked about having blackouts, and of course, somebody listening to this may think you passed out or you got up too fast from a chair. Blackouts sometimes would happen when they would turn off all the lights in case there were planes coming over, so they wouldn't know what to bomb.
When I took a train from San Antonio to go to boot camp, and I got off the train there in San Diego, I was amazed. I could not believe, looking up at the sky, that you couldn't see it because there was nets over all of the streets wherever there was lights, and they put that in there in order to protect the coast from lights out onto the ocean.
But I don't think anything was ever bombed in California.
No, nothing was ever bombed, and I don't think any ship or any airplane ever came close.
But after since we had a lot of troops and carriers and people in Pearl Harbor, and that was such a surprise.
Well, and that's where they were building all those
on a
airplanes
Sunday.
and everything.
Well, we already knew that. I think his name was Hirohito or something, or Emperor.
No,
I don't remember. I'm not a history person. But don't leave your brother out. You had an older brother. We're going to do your oral history later. But Evans was older, and he went over in the European.
In San Diego, out in California, that period of time when, like the Bruton was out there, and he and I got together a lot of times. And in fact, we went to Los Angeles. We went to those big, wonderful dance halls that they had out there, and that was very popular because in those days, the big band era was very popular, and we went to several of the dances.
So Evans was out in California?
Yeah, he was there.
Because he wound up as a glider pilot. This isn't about him, and he was a glider pilot which had no engine. They pulled him up and landed troops in the European theater, either near or behind the line. So he wound up over in France and Germany.
And he never did actually land any troops. He was prepared, and he had his his glider plane ready to go, but after all of the others' first part took off, he never did take off, so he was very fortunate that...
So he never flew an actual mission, but he was trained.
Flight during the war.
Well, he must have been moved over to London, Great Britain or somewhere.
But he flew a lot over in there in practice, but never did actually go to land.
And I know up until his death, when did he die? What year? This is 09. Well, around 2000. But before that, he'd go to glider pilot reunions, and
every
and I knew some people. Anyway, we're not talking about him or me. So let's get back to what you remember about California and the marriage. So I don't want to get off track. Or moving back to Odom.
Let him meet you.
I will. Well, let's get you back from you get married. You meet who I call my grandparents, who is E.S. Butler Sr., and your brother was Evans Spark Butler Jr., and you're Robert Randle. And we do want to throw in here, your mother was Elizabeth Skull. Now, she died at what age were you?
I was a year and a half old when she
So
died.
you don't remember that.
No,
You've got a picture that we'll copy, but eldest Caldwell Butler was
2 years later.